We think that the power of God unto salvation is popularity in the culture. We believe that what God really needs is for us to be powerful and popular so that God can use our name to get the gospel out. That's why we get so enraptured when we find out that some popular or powerful person is a Christian. Did you hear that so-and-so was a Christian? No. Well, he is. Okay. But do you realize how popular and how powerful he is and how God can use his name and his platform? Stop right there. God already has a name that is above every name, the name at which every knee will bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth. And every tongue will confess that he is Lord to the glory of God the Father. If God already has the name that's above every name, what makes you think he needs yours?
When I was in school, and my school was a rather poor school, they were trying to give us a class called Art Appreciation. And what our professor told us was, you have to develop a mind that can appreciate beauty. And later on, at times, after I left our cattle ranch, and I learned that there were other things other than meat, my wife would make me eat all sorts of strange things. And she said, you have to develop a palate to appreciate finer things. I believe that we are born again, quite uncultured. And I believe that it is the task of the preacher to cultivate the mind of the flock and to give them a palate so that they learn to reject the common and they learn to appreciate what is truly beauty. That they learn to taste and see that the Lord is good. And that is the purpose of the preacher, in that he spends long hours every day locked in a room alone with God and the Word, that he may pull forth at least something of the great infinite truth locked in this book about God, and teach the people so that the people can appreciate that which is true. And that's why I'm so burdened for what calls itself Christianity in America, because many of the pastors are entertaining people with fodder, with the carnal.
Swim in the Bible every day. Don't give it a little touch as you head off to do what you really like to do. Swim in the Bible every day. It is an ocean of bright, glorious, weighty, all-satisfying truth about the one for whom you were made.
Here, in these words, is life, beauty, the manifestation of the glory of God, he who was revealed in the flesh. You see, you can't understand how powerful this phrase is unless you understand who he was prior to his incarnation, and what it meant for the Son of God to take upon himself a body in the likeness of human flesh, and then to wade through this world for the sake of his bride. I was preaching last week in California, and I had to preach on Ephesians 2:1. We were dead in our trespasses and sins. And the only way I could communicate what that text is really saying is this. Imagine yourself as a dead and rotting corpse laying at the bottom of a cesspool that was created by the refuse and the rot flowing out of your own body. So here you are, dead in your trespasses and sins, in the realm of all your transgressions, and sins. And in the incarnation, the Son of God comes and wades that cesspool. And then on Calvary, He dives in headfirst after his bride. He takes her in his arms, as filthy as she is, and he pulls her out of that cesspool. And he cleanses her with his blood. And he puts his mouth on her mouth and breathes life into her. You see, there is enough power in just this to propel a regenerated heart throughout into an eternity of piety. The raising of Christ from the dead by the Spirit of God is the great evidence that his death had meaning. And what was that meaning? It all comes down to this. Every time I present the gospel, I begin with this. The greatest problem in all the world is if God is just, he cannot forgive you. That is the great dilemma of Scripture. All of Scripture is geared toward answering this one question. If God is just, how can he forgive wicked men and still be just? And the answer is found in the death of his Son on Calvary, where he bore the sin of his people. He bore his bride's sin. And then all the wrath of God against her was poured out on him. And through his suffering and death, the offended justice of God was satisfied and wrath was appeased. If that's not in your gospel, you don't preach the gospel. The power of the gospel to advance God's redemptive plan of the ages. God is not losing. You see, you've got to be very, very careful that you do not judge everything from the microcosm in which you live. If I go to almost every country in the world, Christianity is a minority. But if you add up all the people who know Christ, scattered throughout all the world, I can assure you that Christ's enterprise is the biggest thing on this planet. I am not discouraged. He rolls on and rolls on triumphantly. He does. And this gospel is powerful. I know, brethren, I know that if I shed all of Saul's armor and I stand before the world or a tribe or the Bedouins in the Middle East, and I have nothing in my hand except the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ, I know if I preach long enough, someone's coming out of there converted. And then finally he says, taken up in glory. Christ's present triumphal reign through the gospel. He ends in glory. It all ends in glory. It all ends in glory. If you've read the scriptures correctly as a man of God, there should be times in your life, brethren, where your wife will catch you in your office or seated outside on a chair. She takes one look at you and she knows she's lost you. You're gazing, you're looking, you're waiting. You're longing for the glory that will appear when he appears. This is a glorious cause, the greatest thing that has ever been done. And we're a part of it. And it's wonderful. And it's all rolled up in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Here's what I want. I don't want your life to be controlled by just trying to be good or respectable or religious. I want you to see what Jesus Christ did for you on Calvary, and that your heart would literally be filled with the love of Christ, and that it would control you. You would say, I believe in him. I want to serve him. but because I love him, and I love him because he loved me first when I didn't love him. You see, young person, that's what it's about. Everything God has ever done, making the world, everything is about his Son. Think about it, that on the end of your life, you realize you wasted everything. The one reason to be alive was to know Christ and his salvation, and to spend eternity knowing him and loving him, being transformed by him.